And welcome to the program. I'm Roby Brock. Thank you for joining us. Friday was deadline day at the state capitol as those wanting measures to be on the November ballot delivered their signature petitions to the Secretary of State's office. For constitutional amendments, over 90,000 signatures required. For initiated acts, over 70,000 needed. From those that delivered, we're looking at potentially these measures if their signatures are approved and if they survive any legal challenges, which are likely. A constitutional amendment to alter the state's medical marijuana laws, a constitutional amendment to repeal the Pope County casino license authorization and require local approval for a casino in the future, an amendment to allow for exceptions to the state's no abortion law. There were three measures that did not collect enough signatures: removing the sales tax on diapers and feminine hygiene products, an education amendment, and the Freedom of Information Act proposals. I caught up with Fox 16's chief Capitol correspondent Samantha Boyd to discuss. So let's talk a little bit about some of these that have come in. Let's start first with the Pope County casino repeal, which is really not one that's garnered a lot of attention, although Pope County's casino applications have.
Yeah.
But kind of what's at work in this one? What are the supporters of this amendment trying to do?
So they're trying to essentially, I think, have this back into their control as a county. Because of state law, they're trying to now say, you can't just go put a casino wherever you want. We want to have a say, because a lot of people, I think, in Pope County, that's why there's been so much back and forth over the years.
Yeah.
I mean, this has been an ongoing thing forever, because a lot of people in Pope County apparently still don't want a casino in their town. And then there's other people who say it's going to be great for their town. But I think it's interesting because we've had so much back and forth over who's going to get the casino, you know, Gulfside or Cherokee Nation. But now we remember that there's possibly going to be something on the ballot that will put that up in the air anyway.
Yes,
so
we needed more controversy and uncertainty in Pope County over this whole casino thing, because like you said, for years there hasn't been enough. So.
Yeah, it's been a standstill, but at the same time moving so much.
Yeah.
All in the last few years.
It's kept us busy on the news front here. So basically what would happen is it would require local approval for a casino to be put in a county if somebody were to able to get a constitutional amendment that would allow that to happen. It's confusing, but it would undo what's already in place. So.
Yeah, state law. Yeah.
All right, medical marijuana is another one that's kind of flown a little bit under the radar in terms of visibility, but this one has a lot in it, this medical marijuana amendment, which voters approved a few years ago, but this kind of makes some alterations and changes.
Yeah, I'm having to look down at my notes because there's so much to this, but one of the main things I think was it allows different people to now be able to prescribe medical marijuana, and it extends basically the qualifications, what you might have to be prescribed medical marijuana, and then it extends the expiration dates for the registered identification cards from 1 year to 3 years, I think.
Right.
So
yeah, you've also got to, I think it allows, I think this will be one of the more controversial measures, is that someone over the age of 21 can actually grow a limited number of marijuana plants for medical use in their home, in their domicile. That was something that the original medical marijuana supporters wanted in there when it passed, but they weren't sure they could get it in there, so we'll find out on this.
Yeah, I think it's been interesting that it's flown under the radar, because the last election I covered, I remember I was on the marijuana issue, and that was what everyone was talking about, and it may become that way once we know if it's going to be on the ballot. But yeah, I think it's interesting. We've kind of not seen a ton about it, because 2 years ago that was not the case.
One of the reasons that Pope County and the medical marijuana amendment easily kind of surpassed their signatures to the Secretary of State's office too is because they hired professional canvassers to make this happen. Let's move to the Arkansas abortion amendment. This one has stirred a lot of controversy, even in the signature collection process. But let's talk about what it would potentially allow to happen.
Yeah, so essentially it would allow for exceptions. We have the near total abortion ban in Arkansas. We've been named the most pro-life state for years now. But this would allow for exceptions in the case of rape, incest, and fatal fetal anomaly.
Yeah,
I think
very
I'm saying
well
that. I've been struggling with that word.
Yeah.
And then it would allow too for abortions within 18 weeks of fertilization or 20 weeks since the mom's last menstrual cycle. So yeah, it's been that's the one that I think people have talked about the most. I have friends who aren't interested in politics at all, and I've seen stuff on their stories one way or another about this. Everyone seems to kind of know that this is out there, and abortion is one of those things everyone has an opinion on.
Right. And we've seen in other states too, like Kansas and I think Ohio, several other states, there's been, ever since Roe v. Wade has been overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court, you've seen states now putting some of these things on the ballot.
Right.
You tell me if you agree with this or not, but I mean, I sense that the supporters of this could also see this as a big driver of voter turnout in the fall. And I could see it working both ways, to be honest with you. I could see it bringing out more pro-choice Democrats, but I could also see it really mobilizing a pro-life Republican base as well.
We have a low voter turnout in Arkansas, and I did a story a year ago that reminds me, and the people told me a lot of times people put issues on the ballot too, trying to ramp up voter attendance or people coming to vote. So you wonder if it's part of that too. But yeah, it's I think it's a little bit of a result of what happened in Ohio too, because that's a red state. We saw what passed there, and it was surprising to a lot of people. And I remember I asked a woman who was from Arkansas and went to Ohio actually to push for that measure. I did a story with her when she got back, and I was like, do you think we're going to see something like this in Arkansas? And she said, I don't think anytime soon. She said it would have a hard time in Arkansas.
Yeah.
And look where we are now.
We're going to find out. Yeah, we haven't done any public polling on that. We haven't done any public polling on that, but I'll be curious to see what happens, assuming that this gets the signatures that it needs to make the ballot.
They've been ahead of some of the other measures we've been following, at least this week with signatures.
All right, Samantha, there were 3 potential ballot items that did not make the cut. They didn't deliver enough signatures. Let's start first with the FOI amendment, and it was also an initiated act. Kind of in general, what was that act and that amendment trying to do?
So you probably remember from the special session, which at this point we're like, which special session was that? When was that even? We've had so much. But the special session that was called in part to make changes to the FOIA law, there's a lot of controversy on both sides over that. And what it appeared to be trying to do is preventing that from happening so easily again, where the legislature can make changes on its own to freedom of information. So they're wanting to make it harder for them to make changes. So I believe it's 2/3 vote from, the people, and then 9/10 from the legislature. Is that correct?
Right.
Which sounds almost impossible. I mean, and I think that's the point. They don't want to make changes to something that's been a law for so long.
Yeah. Another big one was the education amendment. You've seen the governor and the secretary of education, as well as a couple of different ballot question committees opposing even getting signatures for that. They fall short of their goal. They say they'll be back in 2026, but they're about 20,000, 21,000 short on that. In general, just kind of what was the gist of what was in that education amendment?
I think most people know it by their intent to give access to universal pre-K for 3- and 4-year-olds. I think that's how a lot of people knew it, but it was also looking to hold schools to the same standards, whether you're private or public, holding schools to the same standards. And there's one other part of it too that it was the part also that allowed for after-school programs to be universal as well. So that was a big one. And then you had what was called the pink tax. It failed to deliver. This is something that's been tried in the legislature before to remove the sales tax on feminine hygiene products and diapers. Maybe it'll come back in the legislative session. Maybe. I will say, I remember I did a story with Pilkington my first year covering session. He tweeted something about how he was sponsoring a bill trying to do this. And I remember, I think Bob Ballinger tweeted back, he was like, we're killing it. And there was so much drama about this in the legislature. But yeah, legislators have been kind of trying to do this for a while. And can't speak to why it didn't get the signatures it needed, but it doesn't seem like a controversial thing to a lot of people.
All right, Samantha Boyd, KARK, Fox 16 reporter, thank you very much.
Thanks.